What if it rained food? What if Earth was a cube? What if we had 9 lives? What if bits could fly? It's absurd. If money grew on trees, if we didn't have knees, if we walked through life slightly magnetical, it's absurd. Absurd Hypotheticals.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't done something like this before, because it seems like a pretty low-hanging fruit for us in our podcast. But we're doing today is a science fair grab bag, where we all took one of the stereotypical science fair projects that you would expect a high schooler to do, and turn them into, well, absurd hypotheticals. It's what we do.
I mean, the reason we didn't do it before is because we didn't do grab bags before.
Still, you would have thought we would have found some way to get to one of these science fairy questions at some point.
It's more like, how did none of these ever end up on our brainstorm lists?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Marcus, yours might have. I don't remember.
Actually, it might have, yeah.
Well, then why don't I start? Because obviously mine's the most obvious one. And of course, the epitome of science fair projects, the number one best science fair project in the world, vinegar and baking soda volcanoes. So the question I did is, what if you had a full-sized vinegar and baking soda volcano? So first off, how do vinegar and baking soda volcanoes work? So you have baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, vinegar, which is dilute acetic acid, and when you combine them, it converts into water, sodium ions, acetate ions, and carbon dioxide. And so basically, once it all goes into in solution together, and the sodium bicarbonate dissolves, the acetic acid and the basic and the is acidic, and the baking soda is basic, and the reaction of them canceling each other's out produces carbon dioxide, is what causes the whole thing to bubble up. So all that trapped carbon dioxide is actually what causes the bubbling. So effectively, it's all carbon dioxide gas. So I kind of looking at, would this be dangerous compared to the stuff that's in regular volcanic gas? Because I know from past experience, lots of carbon dioxide is not very good. In fact, in not super high doses, carbon dioxide is poisonous and will easily poison and suffocate you. So, for a volcano, basically 60% or more is you can save 60% more in car insurance, but no, it's 60% plus of the emissions are water vapor. So most of what comes out of a volcano is water. About between 10 and 40%, which is basically the rest of it, is actually CO2. The other bits in it that are mixed in are the nastier stuff, like sulfur, methane, carbon monoxide, but those are all in pretty small concentrations. So the gases our reaction produces are about the same as that. We probably have, on average, a higher concentration of CO2, but that can actually still be dangerous. It's kind of what makes CO2 dangerous, and this happens with real volcanoes already, is if you have a pretty not windy day, so the air doesn't move around too much, CO2 is heavier than air, so all that CO2 gas can actually pool in a valley. If you have a town at the base of the mountain and it has some slopes and it's makes a bowl, the CO2 gas can actually fill up and displace all the good oxygen-rich breathing air, and actually people can suffocate just at ground level due to CO2 gases from the volcano. Never mind getting killed in all the cool ways like lava and heat and actual poisons. You can just die from the.
We already learned about that a few episodes ago.
Yeah, we've like I said, we've covered CO2 poisoning a few times because lots of things make CO2, very common gas. So that's kind of the base. That's kind of the base thing. If you have the only dangerous thing really happening out of the volcano is the CO2 gas, and there are a couple other things that I need to consider. Because, do you guys know why lava is hot?
Pressure?
Yeah, so basically, lava, of course, is just melted rocks for the most part, and they don't get hot on their own. So basically, in the Earth's mantle, you have the high pressure and radioactive decay. They call it radiogenic heating. So the decay of uranium and thorium and potassium-40 apparently are what are driving, are actually melting all the rocks in the mantle to form a volcano, which kind of hits a couple problems. So the first problem is, does our science fair reaction actually work when the materials are very hot? Like, does this reaction actually occur, or would something else happen?
So in your situation, you're saying that where the molten stuff would normally be is vinegar and baking soda.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
basically what a volcano is a hole down to the mantle. So if you have a baking soda vinegar actual volcano, you just got to replace all that molten rock with, vinegar and baking soda. So basically I'm having it's sourced from the mantle that is, I guess, filled entirely with baking soda and vinegar now. That would cause other problems. The whole mantle is that, but I'm kind of just counting it that it would still be hot because the things that make lava hot is not anything to do with what the lava is made out of. So I was trying to figure out if this reaction would work when it's hot, and I actually found a YouTube video, thanks to the folks at the YouTube channel What We Made, where they took quote unquote molten baking soda. You ever see those videos where like they heat up materials and like with whatever torches and things to bring it up to whatever 1,000 degrees? So they did that. So they took baking soda, heated it up to until it was glowing red.
It's like those knife videos.
Yeah, like
Right.
the hot knife through bread, when everything's just like 1,000-degree knife versus water bottle, or whatever those videos are.
They're always disappointing, those videos.
So this one was actually, it was both disappointing and relieving for my answer, because when they poured the molten baking soda into the vinegar, it literally just did the normal thing. There was it was not extra big. It was not extra, like, it was more than likely faster based on the chemistry that I learned while looking at this, but it just worked pretty normal.
Like, awesome, I don't have to worry about things getting super complicated.
Yeah, exactly. You do have to worry about impurities, because they then followed up by putting molten salt and dropping it into that vinegar pool, and that exploded a lot. But the baking soda was just fine. And that kind of was my next thing, was the reaction happens at those temperatures. But would you have a typical like magma pool? Because what do vinegar and baking soda look like at those high temperatures? So the inside of a volcano ranges from 700 to 1,200 degrees Celsius. Baking soda has a melting point of 50 degrees Celsius. And interestingly, when baking soda quote unquote melts, it actually is, what it's doing is it's melting but it's also dissociating. So baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, and it dissociates into just sodium carbonate. So it becomes a slightly different material, like a different compound. But luckily, when you actually get to the vinegar reaction, the vinegar basically puts it back into bicarbonate and then does the normal reaction. So it actually just slows it down slightly. It adds an extra step, but it still works. It is a little tricky because baking soda actually boils at 851 degrees Celsius, so it's in the range. So if you have a slightly cooler volcano, in the 700 to 850 range, you would have a respectable pool of bubbling baking soda at the bottom. Vinegar, though, is kind of more the problem, because vinegar boils at just a little bit more than water at 118 degrees Celsius. So all your vinegar will not be in liquid form at those temperatures. And this complicates things, because the vinegar won't be liquid in it, and when it's not a liquid, it can't form, it doesn't go into solution and doesn't start the reactions that we want. So I was like, crap, so now this whole thing doesn't work. But we haven't quite painted the whole picture yet, because at the base of this volcano, it is this hot. It is 700, it is 800 degrees Celsius, and it's all vinegar vapor and baking soda that aren't really reacting much. But as you go higher in the volcano, mouth, it's going to get cooler and cooler and cooler. And at a certain height, you're going to hit the point where the vinegar turns back into a liquid. And once you have that, now that vinegar, whether this is in the volcano, like high up in the volcano, or maybe even, in the area right above it, once it turns, you're just going to have clouds that are going to actually just go ahead and rain back into the belly of the volcano. And so what falls down really shouldn't have enough time to completely vaporize before it hits the lava. So you will have some amount of reaction going. And I think what's cool is that if you have conditions that like more quickly cool the vinegar up top, like say you have a particularly cold air that is pushing downwards into the volcano, or you have like probably a rainy day, you'll end up causing more of that vinegar vapor to turn back into a liquid, and you'll actually have periodic eruptions where there's more activity. So I think our volcano would actually not only just work, but also work on
sustainably.
Yeah, like in an actual like periodic volcano way.
It'd be like based on the weather.
Yeah, it'd be more predictable, which is good, I guess, for volcanoes. So that's kind of like the volcano. The volcano works. There's gonna be a couple other problems that go along with the vinegar vapor. So I don't know if you guys, well, Ben, I'm sure you know, and Chris, you probably don't know. But when you're cooking and you're making like a pan sauce or something, you throw a vinegar into a hot pan and it vaporizes, and you breathe that in. That sucks. That's not comfortable.
It's not great.
So basically, what vinegar is made out of, I mentioned before, is that it's basically dilute acetic acid. So vinegar is between I think it's 5 and 8% acetic acid. So an 8% will be a strong vinegar and 5% will be a more mellow one. But of course, we're going to have a lot of this, and because the temperature at which water boils is lower than the one where the acetic acid boils, the acetic acid is going to separate from the water, and you're going to have acetic acid rain on the volcano separate from the water. It's going to be more concentrated than it would be like in your kitchen. And so a couple bad things. One, if it just is vapor, it is not fun to breathe. It is not good for you. Anything above like 10% was noted as intolerable to the average person, which they didn't give quite a specific definition of what that would do. They mentioned, lung damage, eye irritation, etc., etc. But I think there's going to be basically a toxic cloud around this volcano that's going to make it not good for like if you want to visit the mouth of the volcano. I don't think you can do that anymore. And the other problem is that acetic acid actually is quite corrosive and can corrode rocks and metals. So assuming your volcano is made out of, rocks, or I guess theoretically you could imagine it's made out of paper mache, which would be worse. But even if it's made out of rock, it's probably would wear down fairly quickly thanks to the acetic acid. And then you kind of have the problem where you have an eroding, probably leaky volcano where the acid is carving out grooves and things for, the baking soda to escape to the outside of the volcano, in which case you're now just, making things bad for everybody.
This sounds worse than a normal volcano.
Yeah, I think the eruption itself is going to be less catastrophic because it's really just the CO2 that's a problem. The problem is going to be that it's now just full of acid as opposed to, not acid. And all the stuff that would be, countering the acidity is the baking soda, which is the thing that's just stuck in the middle. So it's just lots of vinegar is the real killer here, I guess is the point. So yeah, that is what happens if you have a full scale vinegar and baking soda volcano.
So you go nowhere close to them, probably.
Yeah, you can't go close to them, and you have to worry about them just dissolving away and leaking into your village, which should not be in a bowl that can get filled with CO2. That's also a problem.
Don't live in a bowl next to a volcano. Got it.
I mean, don't live next to a volcano is pretty good advice in just like normal non-vinegar based life anyway. So
what's the worst that can happen?
Vinegar based life.
Live that hashtag vinegar life. That is how I cook. I love vinegar. I just I'm like, oh, these veggies, what if I just put them all in vinegar and just make the whole dish sour?
It's like salt and vinegar chips. I hate salt and vinegar chips. I don't like them.
Oh, I love salt and vinegar chips. They're so good.
Some people dip their fries in vinegar. I don't like that.
It was really funny. We had a contentious debate with my family over the last weekend over whether the sour dill chips were better or the salt and vinegar chips were better. And they're basically the same goddamn chips.
I will say I prefer the salt and vinegar to the sour dill. But this is
See,
all kind of
that is what I said. I like dill in small doses. Dill, like too much dill is too much dill. Can't have too much
big
salt
dill
and
to me.
vinegar.
I don't think I've ever had the dill chips, sour dill chips.
Well, you don't try them. They're worse than the salt and vinegar chips. You're wasting your goddamn time.
Okay, got it.
All right, Chris, now waste our goddamn time with your answer.
So for my answer, the classic science fair experiment that I looked at was potato batteries. So first thing I look at how potato batteries actually work. So the potato actually isn't the source of the power. What the potato does is it connects two electrodes to each other. So it's like two dissimilar metals. They usually use zinc and copper are two common ones that they use. And what the potato does, it acts as a bridge between those two electrodes, and it allows the cathode, which I think in this case is the zinc, to provide it like sends an electron through the potato to the anode, which is the copper, and the copper receives the electron. And that traveling of the electron creates like an electric current, and that's what causes the power or produces the power. So it's really the zinc that and like the exchange of the electron. It's not the potato. You can use other things. So they use like bananas and strawberries also work. Sometimes they use lemons. It's really like the acid that's in the potato that creates the bridge. So anything just with that acid or the high salt content will work. But the potato is usually used because it's more preferred because it's more durable than other things and it attracts less pests. So that's kind of why it's more common. So that's how a potato battery works. So the question I wanted to answer was, would the world be able to run on potato power, just potato batteries, and that's it? So to do this, I need to find out how much energy a potato battery produces. And to do this, I found a video of someone measuring the voltage and current of just one potato battery. So the YouTube channel that I found called Monkey See, they measured the voltage and current, and I calculated from that the potato battery produces 0.00036 watt hours of energy.
That's not good.
It's very low. As a point of comparison, a normal like alkaline AA battery provides about 3.9 watt hours.
So that's like 1,000 potatoes?
Yeah. It's like 10,000 potatoes.
How do they fit all those potatoes in that little battery?
But we can increase the energy output of a potato, actually. So there's a study in 2010 by researchers at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It was led by a guy named Chaim Rabinovich. And they found that cooking the potatoes actually reduces the electrical resistance that makes it reduces the electrical resistance within the potato, and that makes the battery more powerful. So in the experiment, they ended up boiling their potatoes for 8 minutes, and they cut it into slices. So I think they had like either 4 or 5 slices for one battery, and they were like attached in a series to create like cells in a battery. And doing this, they were able to increase the energy output by a factor of 10.
So now it's just 1,000 potatoes.
Yeah. And they're actually able to use this setup to power like 2 LED lights. I think they had like zinc plates and copper plates, and they sandwiched the potatoes like in between them instead of just like sticking like nails in them or whatever. So I think it was like the contact area helped. So if there's more contact area, you get more energy. And they actually said that with their system, they could light a room with LEDs for 40 days, which is actually pretty decent. That sounds kind of promising. And their goal for the entire study was that eventually they wanted to provide a light source, like a cheap light source for developing countries. So like a benefit of the potatoes that they found as a selling point was that, well, they ran a cost analysis of this, and they found that one potato battery or potato power, I guess in general, it costs $9 per kilowatt hour compared to like a D battery costs $84 per kilowatt hour. So it reduces the cost by a factor of 10, which is very significant.
It seems like one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I've created this technology for developing countries because it has no practical use in places that It doesn't have any practical. It's like it doesn't have any practical use. They say it's for developing countries because they're like, oh yeah, they have plenty of potatoes, right? It just seems like I don't know specifically what part of it is wrong or the most wrong. It seems wildly misguided.
Yeah, I mean, so they were like part of the argument was that potatoes are the fourth most abundant food crop. So like potatoes are, and they're like spread out throughout the world. Like a lot of places have potatoes.
But you know it's not super abundant? Like a whole bunch of zinc plates.
Yeah, so that was one of the issues. So they did do a follow-up 3 years later, and because it ended up not being able to scale up. And they kind of tried to figure out the reasons for that. And one of the reasons they said is just because no one decided to invest in it because they're more interested in other forms of infrastructure like solar and wind power. And they just didn't, like, potato power has a negative stigma and it's not glamorous at all, so they just didn't, no one decided to invest in it. That was one of their reasons.
Oh my god, that's my other favorite one from science. Is like, this technology would be feasible if it was invested in, and it's like, nah, I don't think so.
I also like the idea that the problem is that potato power was not glamorous enough.
Yeah,
which is, I mean,
you know, energy companies are risk adverse, and they won't sign on bold new inventions like potato power.
Another issue was that it provides power, but it's like a very low voltage power, and it's a low current power, so it's not extremely useful.
It technically supplies electricity.
Yeah.
For some definition of electricity.
And then a third problem that they came upon was that it actually, like, if they're using it for developing countries, it depletes their food stocks. So, like, if they use potatoes as a source of food, then they would need to not eat in order to have power.
See, I also feel like that's just not a true statement. Like, that feels equally misguided, where it's just like, what are the problems with your plan? It's like, well, I guess if they use the potatoes, they can't eat the potatoes, right?
I mean, I can see that being sort of legitimate.
That's the problem. It's only sort of, like, it's logically there, but the practical, I can't imagine that's the practical result of it.
Well, I mean, obviously there are other issues too, but...
Yeah, the fact that you're trying to seriously power things with potatoes. That's what our show is for. It's absurd hypotheticals, not, you know, competitive alternatives to solar and wind power hypotheticals.
But let's say we do seriously want to power the world with potatoes. Could we come up with solutions for these issues that they ran into? So you can solve the low voltage and low current problem because you can increase the voltage if you connect the batteries in series, and you can increase the current if you connect them in parallel. So if you have the right setup, you can get the voltage and current to what you want it to be. For the food stocks, like depleting food stocks, I guess we could just have them stop eating potatoes and grow some other stuff. I don't know.
Just grow more potatoes. There can be Porque no los dos. You can
more
just have potatoes for everybody.
Yeah. And then for the stigma thing, I don't know, we could have like people lobby for potatoes. That's possible. So, okay, we solved those, kind of. How many potatoes would we actually need to power the world now that we've increased our energy output by 10 times? So to match because I said a AA battery is 3.9 watt hours. Now that we have a boiled potato, that means that in order to match a AA battery, we need 1,083 potatoes. So obviously
that still feels like a lot. Yeah.
Promising. But I was like, okay, let's just start scaling it up anyway, just to see. So to power your home, I actually took this from a previous episode that we did from Ben's answer when he found out how many hamsters you need to power the world. And to power one home, you would need 30 kilowatt hours per day. So for that, you would need 8.3 million potatoes per day. So that per year, that would be 3 trillion potatoes.
So far sounds sustainable.
Yeah. So obviously it's not going to work, but I just wanted to see for the world anyway, because why not? So the world in 2019, we consumed around 159 terawatt hours of energy. Terawatts is a big number. And that means that we would need 44 quadrillion potatoes. We very rarely go into quadrillion.
You know what this is? This is exactly... You know that game online, that cookie clicker game?
Yeah.
where all you do like is you click the cookie and you get $1. And then you can hire people to make cookies for you and create factories. And the joke of the game is that you go from having, $20 from your cookie stand to literally pentillions of dollars from your demon-fueled, world domination cookie business. This is basically that, except for
Potatoes.
Matt Damon is the start. You start with Matt Damon, and he's making some potatoes, and he starts hooking them up in series, and suddenly he's powering a potato producer, and then you just go wild from there.
I'm having deja vu. I feel like we've had this conversation in the past, 50 episodes ago or something.
We probably have.
I do like Cookie Clicker.
So that's a lot of potatoes. We need 44 quadrillion potatoes. How many potatoes do we actually grow? So in 2019, they measure it in metric tons. So in 2019, we produced 423 million metric tons of potatoes in the world. And I found that the average potato weighs about 6.15 ounces, which is 0.00017 metric tons. So that means that we produce around 2.5 trillion potatoes per year, which is 0.0057% of what we need.
Yeah, trillion sounds like a big number until you need a quadrillion, in which case it's no good.
Yeah, we're nowhere close at all. We are kind of close to being able to power a house for a year, though. So we needed 3 trillion and we have 2.5 trillion. So we're only 500 billion off.
God, is that how bad? Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it is possible. So if you...
if we all work together.
If everyone stopped eating potatoes, we maybe increase our potato production a little bit, and then we go 2 months without power, then we could do it. And that's pretty much how much we could sustain with just potato power. And just as a side note, because I found it was kind of interesting, so this reaction that creates the power, like the exchange of electrons from the zinc to the copper, a byproduct of that is actually hydrogen. So we would need somewhere to store these 3 trillion potatoes, and it would be, for some reason I imagine it all being in one spot.
Because why not?
And it just in one warehouse, and all this hydrogen would be building up, and it would be very flammable. And I guess we need to boil the potatoes, so I guess we could use it to boil them. We could, I don't know.
Or you talk about storage, hydrogen, you got a big blimp, just have a hydrogen filled blimp, and
flying
the potatoes, and it's a flying potato supply.
Flying potato battery.
Flying potato battery.
Okay, I like that. Sure.
It's gonna be the name of my next punk band.
It's only gonna be supplying energy to one house, though, so probably be tethered to the house. It's more of a flying potato balloon battery. I don't know.
Doesn't really roll off the tongue.
No, but yeah, that's what you would do, I guess. Nowhere close to powering the world, but you can power your house, kind of, sort of. Ben, what did you do?
So I looked into that thing where you put Mentos in Coke and it explodes.
Do you think you're allowed to do that as a science fair project?
Yeah, totally. Why not?
If the baking soda vinegar volcano is allowed, then why isn't that allowed?
One is better at making a geyser. One's much messier than the other.
Is that a selling point or a...
Well, imagine you are organizing a science fair event, and you have very nicely been given access to the school gymnasium to, set things up. Or maybe you're in a little convention center that has nice carpets, and one of the kid walks in with 2 bottles of Diet Coke and
a pack of Mentos.
And a pack of Mentos, and you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, yeah, that's not okay.
So I imagine that in this situation, you would have done it before the science fair and present your...
Yeah, and just put on your poster board.
Yeah, you got your trifold board.
It is true, and I will say I was googling a little bit on the Diet Coke and Mentos, and some of the articles did recommend doing things for a science fair project.
Yeah,
of trying to optimize it or something.
You like alter the number of Mentos and see which one goes the furthest or something.
Before we get into your answer, we probably should have talked about this before any of the answers. But have either of you done the science fair before?
Oh, yeah. I did one where I was seeing if ice melted in different saltinesses of water faster or not, which is sounds like a good topic because it relates to global warming and all that and glaciers and things.
When you said
I didn't pick up on that when I did my project. It was just recommended to me by my teacher like after the grades came in. It's just like I never connected that this was like might have actual applications.
when you said ice melted, I thought you said I smelted, like
I
a
did
weird way
too.
of saying smelled.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I learned how to smelt.
Yeah.
No, I melted ice in cups and timed it. It was not a good project, but it was better than the project I had from the previous year, where I was on a deep scientific hunt to find out if fish could live in different types of water.
Oh yeah, you did mention that before.
No.
And I bought basically a bunch of little goldfish, and I tried that in tap water, in salt water, and in carbonated mineral water. And I don't think I need to tell you the science to tell you which ones they like the least.
This is so bad. Why?
So I wasn't super ambitious in school, and that's about it.
And I wanted a goldfish.
And I wanted the gold. I did have some number of goldfish that survived that experiment. I think the ones in the mineral water had the best chance. Because it was very obvious. I thought they were dead immediately because basically they got caught in the bubbles and they just immediately floated to the
pushed them
surface
up.
once you put them in.
Yeah.
No.
You actually mentioned this on our What If the Ocean Was Carbonated episode.
Oh,
Yeah, and basically they took a second to try to swim to the bottom of the cup and like stay under the water, and then they just got pushed up by the bubbles.
That's really
And,
sad.
Well, they survived, so it all worked out in the end. They're dead now, definitely dead now. I don't know how long they survived after that. I can't imagine I was entertained along by having a couple of shitty pet fish that reminded me of a science fair project I got to see on. But yeah, that was the extent of my science fair attempts.
I honestly don't remember if I ever did a science fair.
I did one with I was measuring static shock to see what different metals would shock you more. So I just went around my house like touching different things and getting shocked.
I definitely had. I feel like my school was always more of a like, here's an experiment for you to do thing than a sort of free form science fair deal.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just forgetting. I've blocked it all out. Who knows? But I don't remember any science fairs.
I did have a brief fling with doing a real science fair project near the end of my high school career, where a classmate of mine actually like did the science fair, like, you know, national level science fair stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was real smart, and we were talking about, you know, in the early stages of that, and I was like, oh yeah, it'd be super cool to do a project like that. And I had in my head, I'm like, I think I figured out the fourth dimension. I was not super smart. And so I was like, oh, you could definitely do a project about the fourth dimension. And I guess he thought it might be like a judge pleaser. So he was kind of like, yeah, if you want to work together on it, we can like try and work together. And I was like, awesome. And then it became, within like 3 days, immediately clear that the amount of work that was going to go into it was much more than the amount of work I was willing to put into it. And I think I ended up like effectively abandoning him before I did any actual research on it. So
Did he continue with it?
probably not all the way through. He probably did something else by the time he actually got there. I didn't follow up very much.
You sound like a good friend back then.
We were good friends. We just stopped talking about the science fair.
Okay.
So yeah, that was as close as I got. So that's my science fair stories.
Anyway, Mentos and Coke. So you've never done this before. If you put Mentos and Coke, it sort of like just gushes up out of the top. The other thing you can do, aside from making like the Coke fountain that way, you can do it as a rocket, where basically you have to like, you usually have to like tape some Mentos together and tape them to like the inside of the cap, then sort of shake it and throw it down the ground so the cap pops off, and then it just all goes out at once and launches the Coke bottle up like 30, 40 feet, something like that. It's, you know, pretty cool. So why does this actually happen? Because it's not the reason I thought it was. I always assumed there was some sort of chemical reaction that caused it to, you know, fizz up a bunch and
Yeah,
explode.
that's what I thought too.
It turns out it's not. It turns out it's entirely a physical reaction. And why it happens is that Mentos aren't actually smooth. They're covered in a bunch of tiny little like dimples and pits and stuff. And when they fall into the Coke, what's happening is all those little cavities are basically making CO2 bubbles form in the Coke. And then as those bubbles form, they then create more bubbles because they're a place for the bubbles to form. And it just sort of, all the CO2 bubbles up at once, which causes the reaction. There's a couple other factors as well. So Mentos contain gum arabic, which I don't know what it's used for on Mentos, but apparently it reduces the surface tension of a liquid it's in.
Gum Arabic is my favorite Microsoft Word font.
It's really annoying that they only actually do it in pink, though. But then also, and then one of the things, it's always Diet Coke you use, and that's because Diet Coke contains aspartame, which also reduces the surface tension of the liquid.
So it works in other liquids too. It's just Diet Coke is better.
Right. Other carbonated liquids.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the go-to like science fair project versions of this is you take a bunch of different sodas and put Mentos in them and see which one like goes up the highest with the fountain. So what can we actually do with this, like scaling it up? So the problem is when you scale it up, it doesn't actually really work. I Googled for a while because I figured that someone on YouTube had at some point done like a giant, bottle of Coke with Mentos. And I found some examples, but they don't really work because you need that pressure to build up quickly. And if you have a larger, like a larger bottle with a larger opening, it's just going to sort of, fizz out a little bit. It's not going to actually fountain.
Yeah, there's a bunch of disappointing ones of people filling like a whole pool with Coke,
right?
And
just nothing
dumping.
Happens.
Yeah,
it's like disappointing as those hot knife videos.
Yeah, I would say more disappointing because at least there is a very hot knife in those.
Yeah,
like that's pretty cool. I got excited for a second because I found one where there was this Russian guy who made like this giant Coke thing and dumped a bunch of what turned out to actually be baking soda in it, which is a chemical reaction and does cause an actual like explosion. So we can't just do like, I was hoping I could can you actually launch yourself into space with a giant bottle of Coke? Doesn't work. Just not going to happen. So we went down some other options. We started looking into what if you could do something with, if this gas is coming up out of the Coke, can you build up the pressure and do something with that? And the answer is no. The problem you run into is that the way that you carbonate a soda is by pressurizing it. That causes the CO2 to absorb down into the liquid. So as the pressure increases, that CO2 is just going to reabsorb into the Coke. You don't just wind up with Coke, which isn't a very exciting result. It's just minty Coke. And at this point, I was getting a little demoralized because options were sort of running a little bit low. But then I did find a very interesting paper from a team at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where basically they had this idea where, so you guys know how submarines change, I have elevation here, which I'm really right, change like depth, right? Basically they have like,
why don't you tell me?
Sure. They have tanks in them that they either pump air into or out of to basically raise or lower the density of the submarine as related to the water around it, which makes it either rise or sink. But that process takes time because you have to pump in the air, and then there's, you're not actually like really, you don't have great fine grained control over it. And they thought that if you released these little microcavitation bubbles, you could basically lower the density of the water above or below the submarine, which would let the sub either, dive faster or surface faster than just affecting its own density. I was like, well, what if you had, remote controlled pockets of Mentos that you could release that would create these bubbles and let you do the same thing? I got all excited and I read further in the paper and found out they tried it didn't work. Just straight up doesn't work. So basically the problem is that it just always winds up making it more buoyant, which it's not nothing. Like that's technically kind of useful. I tried to go down that road for a while with like letting people surface while diving with Mentos, but that would only work if they were diving in Coke, which isn't particularly useful. I need something a little more general than that. And finally, I actually was kind of just accepting the fact that my answer was going to be a shrug. And I was looking into just basically other things that, people use cavitation for, this forming of a lot of bubbles like this. And I ran into something, which is, do you know how fast a torpedo travels? This is a fun question. Because I found out I very much did not know.
Yeah, I have no idea of the scale at all.
Yeah. So it turns out Would you like to guess, Marcus? Do you have a guess?
No, I'm not gonna guess.
That's
That's
fair.
just gonna make me
Just
look
gonna make me look
stupid.
stupid.
The only thing is I can look stupid. Either I guess it right and your fact sounds boring, or I get it wrong by a lot.
That's
and I
true.
look silly.
Those are really the only options. Can you say it goes like 6 miles an hour so you look really silly?
I would say that it goes 6.2 miles an hour.
Joke's on you. It goes 4 miles per hour. No. So the torpedoes the U.S. Navy uses, the Mark 48 torpedo, only has a top speed. Well, hilariously, the official listed top speed is just greater than 32 miles per hour, which is very vague. The actual top speed is apparently around 63 or so miles per hour, which is a lot slower than I expected, actually. But it makes sense. It's something you're moving through water, and water has a lot of drag. Which lets me get to the VA-11 Shkval torpedo.
What?
How does that spell? How is it spelled?
Shkval. Shkval.
Yep.
I mean,
Shkval.
that's all I can get to. Shkval. It was designed around the same time as the Mark 48, actually, both made in the 70s, which has a slightly higher top speed of 230 miles per hour. And the reason that this one can go like 4 times faster is that it is what is called a supercavitating torpedo. And what that means is that it has a specially shaped nose cone and does something that I couldn't find actual like details on with the way it releases the exhaust from the engine. That basically, as it moves, it forms a bubble of gas around the torpedo, which just prevents the water from making contact with it, which close to eliminates all drag from the water. And apparently the US Navy is actually working on a submarine that could do something similar. And theoretically, if you could make something that could perfectly supercavitate and have just like a full like air bubble around itself while it's moving the entire time, the theoretical top speed would be the speed of sound underwater, which is about 3,600 miles per hour, which is like about 6 times faster than like an airplane.
Yeah, that's one of the numbers I don't need context
Yeah,
for.
that one's
That's
fast. You can figure that one out. So my idea here, I'm not going to say that you can perfectly supercavitate by putting Mentos on a submarine and putting it in Coke. That's not going to work. I'm not going to make that claim. However, if you have these bubbles coming off from the Mentos and you're moving through Coke, it is going to have an effect. And my idea is basically, and I have no idea how fast it would actually be, because once again, this is not something anyone has tried for very obvious reasons. You should be able to get some effect, and you should be able to, I see it as some sort of like mass transit option to replace like maybe Amtrak, where you just had these tubes of Coke going under the country or on the surface, I don't know, that you just have like weird submarines in covered in Mentos. I think we can get there. I think we can outrun a plane.
All it needs is funding. All these risk-adverse transport
Right.
companies wanting to expand on buses and subways and bicycle lanes. No one wants to live the Mentos submarine dream. Why won't anyone fund me?
Mentos isn't glamorous.
Yeah, they're gonna say it's not glamorous enough. No one wants a Mentos submarine, damn it. Anyway, that's apparently my idea. Is Mentos submarine transportation.
That's awesome. And now that we've all had an award-winning idea, well, actually, I guess just you guys are solving world problems. I'm just making a nasty.
You're causing world problems.
Well, before anyone notices, we're gonna move on to our Would You Rather question. Ben, are you ready?
Sure.
For a Would You Rather?
Oh, I jumped the gun there. Sure.
He usually just says, Ben, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you rather get pooped on by a bird 3 times a day for a week, or have poison ivy for a month?
Wait. Okay, come on. This is easy. This is so easy.
Which way are you leaning for easy?
Here. Okay. I'm gonna say that being pooped on by a bird is far better here.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, all right, I would much rather get pooped on by a bird than have poison ivy for 1 day. And getting pooped on by a bird 3 times a day for a week is only 21 instances of bird poop. And there are 28 to 31 days in a month. Ergo, by math, getting pooped on by a bird is better.
I've actually never had poison ivy before.
Really?
Yeah, I also haven't had it. I know people who've had it real bad.
Yeah.
I was a
I mean,
Boy
I can
Scout.
sort of imagine what it would be like, but I've
itchy.
never had it myself.
It's very itchy.
Yeah, for example, my dad, he had it real bad when he did a bunch of weed whacking, not realizing it was poison ivy.
Oh no! It like aerosolize.
He was also wearing Crocs.
Oh no! Oh no!
So that wasn't fun for him.
I've also never gotten pooped on by a bird, though, so...
I don't... It's one of those things where I'm also not sure if it ever happened to me.
Once, when my sister was in like middle school, a bird pooped directly in her lunchbox. We were at a school. This is actually great because I know she listens to the podcast too. So, hey, Ashley, how's it going? I'm telling your story. Our school, you ate lunch outside, and she like opened up her lunchbox one day and just like literally I think it was literally as she was starting lunch too. It's not like she was like at the end of it. It was just on her lunch, directly into the lunchbox.
Oh, that's amazing. That's like such an innocent, like, funny problem to have too. Like, it sucks because you lose your lunch, but that's a story that goes on and on. You can tell that the rest of your life.
Right. Oh yeah. Your brother can too.
It's like cartoonish. Like it's like if you like, you know, walked under a ladder or broke a mirror that morning. That's like the you
right.
know,
That's how they would
like
show that you
in
have
a
bad
comedy
luck.
movie or something.
I mean, getting pooped on by a bird isn't. I mean, it's not great. Don't get me wrong, but like, it's not the worst thing.
So what does that mean if you just like stay inside all day?
Oh, they'll find a way.
Yeah, you have now committed to having 3 birds in your home.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Or 1 very poopy bird in your home.
Right.
Do you like know when it's coming?
No.
No.
Okay, so it's random throughout the day.
Yeah, I also don't think you can like, you know, carry an umbrella or anything. I think it's like it like poops on you.
Right.
Either on your head or on your, you know, on your clothes.
Yeah.
Which would be the most annoying part of it. Like, once a day, definitely no problem. But 3 times a day, it's like, how many times are you gonna fucking change?
It is one of those things where people are gonna start getting really suspicious. Where like, like think about like the first day, you get to work and you're like, bird pooped on me, that's why I'm late. You like go out and get lunch and you come back, you're like, bird pooped on me again. Like I swear,
that's like, oh my god, I can't believe it. And the 3rd time is gold.
Like eventually, do you have to just? I think eventually you can't change because people just won't. They're gonna be like, dude, no, just like, what are you actually doing? You're like, no, for real, a bird pooped on me again.
So you
like,
have to
look.
show them the poop.
Yeah,
Can you just dress in layers?
that would work.
So
It would be weird.
3 layers a day. And wear a hat.
Just like start the day like in, and this is like day 5 when no one believes the bird's pooping on you anymore. You just like start the day. You got like a light jacket, a sweater vest, and
You just
then
wear like a poncho at all times.
I think rain gear is inappropriate for the hypothetical.
Okay,
I
fair.
think umbrellas and ponchos.
What
are
about a
no good.
hat? Do hats? Can you wear a hat?
You can,
can wear a hat.
but it's not necessarily gonna hit the hat.
Not like a hard hat. You have to wear like a
Right.
baseball cap or like a fabric hat.
I
or
mean,
like
something that you can
like
take
that.
off though, so that it's not hitting your head.
Yeah, it has to be something you care enough that you're gonna have to clean it.
Because if it hits your head, then you have to take a shower, which is much worse than just changing your clothes.
Yeah,
That is true.
that's true.
And even if it hits you in the shoulder, there is a chance it like gets
Some
into
like
your
splash.
hair a little bit.
Yeah.
The splash zone.
How much poison ivy do you have?
Yeah, is it like all over your body, or is it contained to one
It
spot?
can't be all over your body.
Yeah, no, it's got to be like
And what,
maybe like
what part of your
a
body?
random.
What was that?
If Marcus was get killed by a
Sorry,
motorcycle.
Yeah, someone. I just got murdered by a motorcycle. That's it. Goodbye, cruel world. I'll never know how much poison ivy we're gonna have. I think you pick a random. I think it's like a annoying. It's like it's definitely itchy, and maybe like you pick a limb each day, like a random limb.
Oh, so it's changing.
Does it does it spread like poison ivy does? Because then it will eventually probably be on most of your body by the end of the month.
Yeah, so I guess is it one severe case that lasts all month, or is it just like a moderate case that you just do you refresh it every day? Do you just like there's just a poison ivy plant growing like across your doorway and you just don't realize it's there. You just walk through it every day.
Right.
And you're like never connect the dots.
I guess that would be a little more equal in terms of the would you rather.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, like as far as people believing you that's happening, having poison ivy for a month, like, oh man, this poison ivy is not going away. Like people tell you to go to the doctor, get checked
Right,
out. And that
yeah.
might be annoying on like week 2 through 4, but Yeah, if it was a full month for both, I think it would be closer. But
Yeah.
I think it's just a week. I think I could put up. I'm gonna say pooped on a bird 3 times a day for a week. I think is the better of the two.
Yeah.
I think that's clearly the better of the two.
So what do you guys do if it is a month for both?
If it's a month for both,
Actually, why don't we say what if it's a week for both? Because I feel like a month for bird poop is a long time for bird poop.
yeah, that is a lot of bird poop.
You're gonna start having like wardrobe issues.
Right, yeah. So let's say what if it's a week for both? I guess that's not too much different than just having poison ivy. Let's meet in the middle.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks feels like the sweet spot.
Yeah.
In general, the poison ivy is more socially acceptable. It's not like a weird thing that's happening.
Right.
I wish not that I wish I had poison ivy, but I don't know like.
You wish you knew the experience of poison ivy.
Yeah, I wish I had the experience for reference for specifically this podcast, because like I don't think I've ever had anything be itchy for like a week in a like not ignorable amount.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had chicken pox, but that was when I was really young and I don't remember it, so.
My chicken pox, besides the actual like visible pox, was effectively asymptomatic, so that one wasn't bad for me.
God, I'm getting itchy now just like talking about this.
Yeah, I know.
And it's really annoying, which makes me want to pick bird poop again.
I mean, itchiness is like one of the more annoying sensations that
Yeah.
you can have.
I also don't know how to get bird poop out of my clothes.
I mean, you wash them. Like, okay, that's the
As
answer.
opposed to not wash them.
But yeah, but like I worry that like I will need to use like a special
Does
I don't
it
know
stain?
cleaning product. Yeah, like a stain remover or a product, or should I be bleaching it, or do I need one of those fancy like Tide pen? Like what do I do? So I would be at a loss personally a little bit on that front.
I'm less worried about the clothes. I'm more worried about it hitting my head.
I'm more worried about the social implications. So I'm glad we're really covering all the bases here.
All right. So given the time, I think 2 weeks is the time frame. I think given that I have in my wizened adulthood gotten better at not scratching mosquito bites, I think I could deal with the poison ivy and not. I think I'd be more annoyed by having to change 3 times a day and do all that laundry, all that gross laundry, too much poop. So I am actually going poison ivy. Final answer.
I am still gonna go bird poop. Even those 2 weeks. 2 weeks makes it a little worse, but I mean, it's kind of annoying for a little bit, but then when you change, you're just back to normal. So, whereas the poison ivy is a constant annoying throughout the
There's
2
no
weeks.
escape.
Yeah.
2 weeks is getting to the tipping point where I'd start to shift towards wanting poison ivy, but I still do want the bird poop, I think. I agree with Chris.
If you get drunk enough, do you not itch as much?
I think
I already said final answer. Let's not open.
I think you wind up
worms.
just like losing your self-control to not itching. It just gets
Yeah,
worse.
you probably just scratch more.
Yeah, it's probably just you just probably lose the self-control not to scratch. Speaking of having self-control, you should leave your self-control by the door, and walking through that open doorway, go over to www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals, and without even thinking about it, don't even think, just click, just ignore all your impulses, click on the become a patron button. All you'll lose out on is $1 a month, and with that missing dollar, you will magically gain access to all our behind the scenes episodes where we talk about making the show. We brainstorm new ideas and concepts for like show segments and how we're, show structures. We've had guests on. We've had silly things like Ben drinking spicy milk. There's lots of good things in behind the scenes episodes. They are well worth your hard-earned dollar. So again, just don't think about it. Just go and click it. Just www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals. Go and click it.
Type exactly that on impulse without thinking.
Yeah, without even thinking.
The fourth click it is really important. Don't forget that one.
I don't know if they add another dollar every time they click the button, but I can only assume so.
They do not.
They don't.
I basically just want them to play Cookie Clicker with our Patreon page. Just make the numbers go up, guys. Go up into the trillions, please, and we'll be all set. But in any case, whether you blindly go into the wild yonder of the internet and do that or not, you are more than welcome to join us next week where we answer the following question. What if everything was a mirror?